President Joe Biden plans on restarting federal student loan payments, which were halted because of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, if you have federal student loans, you should be expecting to make payments once again beginning in February of 2022. Now, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki addressed this during a recent press conference. Let's watch.
You're talking about the student loan payment pass that expires in February, just for clarity. So in the coming weeks, we will release more details about our plans and we'll engage directly with federal student loan borrowers to ensure they have the resources they need and are in the appropriate repayment plan. We're still assessing the impact of the Omicron variant, but a smooth transition back into repayment is a high priority for the administration. The Department of Education is already communicating with borrowers to help them to prepare for return to repayment on February 1st.
Democrats love to lose. They love to lose. So Biden just lost on his Build Back Better agenda. The Senate has decided to shelve the social spending program. At the same time, he has decided, no, look, the pandemic is still ongoing. We're learning about this new variant, Omicron, but who cares? February is when the payments need to start up again. But why? Why do they need to start up again? What is the reasoning behind that? Now, borrower balances have effectively been frozen for nearly 2 years, with no payments required on most federal student loans since March of 2020, again, because of the pandemic. During this time, interest has stopped adding up and collections on defaulted loans have been on hold. Now, before the pause, borrowers were paying an average of $393 a month for their federal student loans. And that's according to analysis from the Roosevelt Institute. That means that collectively borrowers will be paying roughly $7 billion a month or about $85 billion a year once the payments resume. So that's a lot of money. And it's because we have $1.7 trillion in outstanding student loan debt that cannot be discharged under almost any circumstance. The only way you get your debt forgiven as a student in this country is if you have been defrauded and the fraud was so heinous and so obvious that the federal government might, if you're lucky, agree to forgive some of those loans. But you cannot discharge your student loans in a bankruptcy. So if you're experiencing financial hardship, if you are defaulting on those loans, if you're having trouble feeding your own family, it does not matter. You can't get rid of it. That debt follows you around for the rest of your life. And by the way, that was Joe Biden's doing. That's what he did through his bankruptcy bill. And that's what makes this story so much more frustrating. You know, the payments starting up again is one part of the story, but I would argue a bigger part of the story is that this Democratic Party, under the leadership of Joe Biden, refuses to really do anything about student loans. When he was running for president, he pretended as if he had some interest in maybe forgiving $10,000 for students with crippling student loan debt, but he hasn't even done that. And so Biden is now arguing, well, look, you guys want to get some number, some amount of student loan debt canceled. Why don't you pass legislation? Like legislation like his Build Back Better agenda, is that what he's talking about? He mentions Congress passing legislation because he knows that it'll never happen. And so the student loan debt will never be forgiven. Schumer, Warren, and Presley are also continuing to urge Biden to take further action and cancel up to $50,000 of student loan debt per borrower. Biden said during the presidential campaign, as I mentioned, that he supports canceling $10,000 per borrower, but has not taken action to do so beyond directing federal agencies, oh, he loves to do this, to conduct reviews on whether he has the authority. Hey everyone, I'm the most powerful man in the world. I'm the president of the United States. I know nothing. And so instead of actually wielding the power that I have to better people's lives, I'm just gonna keep asking people to study things. That's what the Biden administration has become, like a massive study group, in lieu of actually forcing or pushing for policy that would improve people's lives. That's what the Biden administration's all about. It's like a common room on a college campus. They're all hanging out and studying together. Shouldn't you guys have done that prior to being in the position of power that you're in? I don't know, call me crazy. Now, one final part of this story is the reaction that you get from people who disagree with canceling any student loan debt. And oftentimes it's older Americans who had a much different experience with college tuition. So it's kind of hard for them to relate to current students who in some cases are in like hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, certainly if they get like a law degree or a medical degree. And so I turned to Greg Gutfeld, who had a knee-jerk reaction after hearing about progressive members of Congress calling on the administration to cancel student loan debt. Here's how he reacted to it.
You know what? Screw you. No one has to pay your damn debt. That's on you. It is not a moral obligation on anybody for the decisions that you make. Hell, why don't we do this? You know what's better? Forget the student loan. I just saw that. I'm sorry. Why not do car loan debt, Dagan? Because you know what? That's more egalitarian. Yeah. They probably, AOC probably doesn't have a car in New York, right? She doesn't need one, or she has a driver. I bet that driver has car loan debt. Why don't we do car loan debt? That's probably about 17 grand too. That's more for the working class than for these overeducated, over-caffeinated idiots.
Well, speaking of over-caffeinated idiots, Greg Gutfeld apparently doesn't know that you can discharge your car loan debt if you are unable to pay for it. You can't do that with student loan debt. So even if you file for bankruptcy, student loan debt is still there, can't get rid of it. A little different when it comes to other loans, including car loans. Let me inform Greg Gutfeld a little bit. So as a final option, like if you're having financial hardship, you can't pay your car payment, you can turn in the vehicle directly to the lender, get something in writing to prove that you surrendered it. Once you surrender the car, the lender will sell it, usually for less than the amount you owe. The remaining balance, called the deficiency balance, should be eliminated in your bankruptcy. Can't do that with your student loans. Not an option, not an option. And that's because Joe Biden pushed to make it so. So I would argue that Biden has a responsibility as someone who created this mess to get students out of the mess, to help them out. Because it's not just about the individual experiencing the financial hardship that comes along with being hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt in some cases. It also has an overwhelming negative impact on our overall economy. But I mean, do they really care about that? They just like to think of everything as black and white, right? Like they don't really like to think about the nuances of what makes the economy run smoothly. Anyway, and then I also want to just quickly talk about the fact that Greg Gutfeld had a very different experience as a college student. He graduated from UC Berkeley in 1987, a year after I was born, and he received a degree in English. And he was a resident of California, which means that the tuition he paid at UC Berkeley was in-state tuition. So I wanted to look into how much did UC Berkeley students pay for tuition back then? And here are the numbers. 1985 to 1986, annual tuition and fees for resident UC undergraduates total was $1,296 for the year. That was the tuition and fees for the year. Now, if you were out of state, a non-resident undergraduate, the number would shoot up to $5,112. But he didn't have to pay that because he was from the state of California. Now let's take a look at how much Berkeley costs today. And this is from Berkeley's own website, okay? Let's take a look. California residents can expect to pay $14,254 per year in tuition. The number actually shoots up to a lot more. So there's a non-resident supplemental tuition that forces the student to pay an additional $29,754. That's on top of the $14,254, okay? And if you're looking to pay for the student health insurance plan, room and board, food, books and supplies, you're looking at about $40,000 to pay for college at UC Berkeley if you are a California resident. A little different from what Greg Gutfeld had to pay for college. So it's rich to hear all of these well-paid cable news anchors give students a middle finger as they're struggling with $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. I think there's a huge problem in this country where you have lawmakers and the very people who give us the news and analysis being completely out of touch and disconnected from the realities that Americans are actually facing every single day.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.